Witches and warlocks. It is still spooky season, but it's almost over. Hey everyone, it's Gabrielle Celeste. Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Sisters podcast.
Hey guys, it's Nicole, and we have a very special guest with us today, a fellow podcaster, Kevin from Where the Weird Ones Are, joining us all the way from Maine, very late. Hi Kevin, thank you for being here when you have to be up in like 4 hours. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. It's interesting the times that I decide to record a lot of podcasts, because a lot of people that I've talked to are either in other countries or on the West Coast, like you guys are. Yeah. So it's not my first time having to stay up late. If anything, I do not mind calling out of work, being like, hey guys, I need a little bit more sleep because this is not going to be a good day if I come in. So,
oh, sad face, no work, boo-hoo.
I know, right?
Oh my
terrible.
Gosh. Yeah. So, Kevin, I was on your show a couple months ago. We were talking. We kind of talked a little bit about everything. That was really fun.
We did.
And so now you're here with us. We haven't done too many collabs with other podcasts. We did do with Beyond the Shadows last year for spooky season. And then we also collabed with, well, back then it was All Things Outrageously Dark, Scary, Beautiful, and Totally True. Now it's Curiosity Killed the Case. We also collabed with them during spooky season. And I don't think we've really collabed with too many other podcasts. Well, we had Marley Rose Harris, and then we had Andy Eaton. But as far as like our little pod community, we don't get a lot of opportunities.
Well, we've had friends that have since started podcasts that have been featured.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Kevin, you know kind of what we do around here, so we'll jump right in. And Gabby was really excited to ask you the questions. So I'm excited to hear, because I was like, oh gosh, Kevin probably doesn't know any of the answers to these questions. So I'm so excited to hear. All right, Gabs, go for it. Oh, wait, sorry, real quick. Kevin, do you want to talk about your show before we jump in? Do you want to tell the people about your show?
Sure. I'll do that. Okay. So my show is Where the Weird Ones Are. It's a conversational based podcast revolving around guest encounters, experiences, whether it's like paranormal, cryptids, aliens, UFOs, spirituality, mental health, and we get pretty conspiratorial over there as well. So like maybe the earth is flat, who knows? That's the kind of, I'm not saying that I believe, I feel like I have to say it every time I bring it up. I'm not saying that I believe in flat earth. I just find it interesting that people do, and that the evidence that they think they have for it and stuff. So yeah, it's mental health is a very important thing that I like to dive into with people who experience a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I don't get a chance to do much spirituality stuff, but have had Reiki healers on talking about their stuff, and so I'm excited to talk with you guys, because I listen to your show as well, and it's very eye-opening and intriguing as well when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Thank you. So yeah, I think I've sent one of our friends over to you. Or maybe I did. I don't remember. I know I talked about it. Brett, if you're listening, go check out Kevin's show, because Brett, I think, would be a very cool guest for you to have on, because Brett channels a
10,000-year-old
10,000-year-old ET. So I think that would be super cool, kind of like right up your alley of the different topics you discuss. So yeah, this is a little reminder to Brett.
I will say too, on top of that, with my show, I'm going to be starting a morning show here pretty soon with our good friend David. So we're going to be, I think November 3rd is going to be the first day. So we're going to be live on YouTube and Instagram together. And it's going to be every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central, so it'll probably be a little bit too early for you guys on the West Coast. But so I started a coffee company, and I've thought, a morning show would be a good way to advertise my coffee company. So
What's your
Oh, I
coffee
love that.
company's name so we can check it out?
it's called Weird Java. So you can find it on my website, where the weird ones are podcast.com. Right now I have 3, which I'll name real quick. Wake the Dead, which is a dark roast, Sasquatch Cafe, and Professional Ghost, which the Professional Ghost and the Sasquatch Cafe are both medium roasts. And I do have a decaf coming out soon, and then I'm gonna have another light roast at some point soon. But as of right now, it's just those 3. So
I'm really curious when we get to your human design what you are, because you are always doing so many different things. You have your hot sauces. Now you're doing the coffee. You were also doing, wasn't there something else that you were doing, like food related? Or
yeah, so
about doing?
I have a supplement line coming out as well. It hasn't happened yet, so it's
Like,
right now. It's in the works.
and you have a podcast. Now you're starting another podcast. You have a baby. You have older kids. You have a job. Like, um, I don't know how you function. Oh my gosh. Okay, so
Me neither.
yeah. well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll let Gabs jump into the questions because I'm really curious about some of your placements.
Yes, definitely. Okay, Kevin. So you're familiar with our little game. Thank you for playing, and thank you for the compliments, and super excited to check out all of your offerings. And we suggest for our audience to do the same. What are your big 3 in astrology? So your sun, your moon, and your rising.
So I am Sagittarius, Gemini moon, and Leo rising.
Okay, you're a Leo that we actually like. So, okay, this passes. I don't know if you know, but like we're not so crazy about Leos sometimes, but there's always exceptions.
Yeah, neither am I updated to. So,
So let's see. We have 2 fire, right? And Gemini is what? Is Gemini air?
Air. Mm-hmm.
So those 2 fire and an air.
Yeah, and those are the signs that really do. Like I associate fire and air with just like the innovation. They're always having ideas. Like they
totally
are very
makes
much.
sense.
Yeah. It's like Steve Jobs energy for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get it, Kevin.
Yeah. So what is your human design makeup?
So it is, if it's correct anyway, it's manifesting generator.
I knew it.
Makes sense. Makes so much
I
sense.
knew it. Total Manny Gen energy. We don't know like when to stop doing things. We have so many different interests in everything, and we're always doing a little bit of this and that. So like I'm somebody who has like right now 4 books on my nightstand because I've started them, and I have like 3 books in progress on Audible as well because I just want to know a little bit about everything at all times. So I was like, he has to be a Manny Jen. I was going to be so surprised if you weren't. Makes sense.
Do you know your profile lines? Because I'm so curious. I feel like I have an assumption of what you might have. Like, so the numbers, like Nicole and I are 4 6s. Do you remember the numbers that came up when you looked?
No, I don't. Because I'm looking forward to being on here. I was looking at what it was. I didn't pay attention past what the actual human design was.
I just want to make an assumption, like you can let us know after, but I'm like, you have to have a 1 3 or a 5 kind of makeup because that just feels like on brand. So yeah,
you said 1 3 or 5. Okay.
So what are some podcasts or audiobooks or shows, I believe is the other option?
Yeah, documentaries, anything.
That you're listening to right now.
That I'm listening to?
Or watching,
So other podcasts, I've been listening to Tinfoil Hat, which is an interesting one. Yeah. So it's a comedian, and he talks about, obviously they get into conspiracies, hence the name.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan. And then I like storytelling. So I've been listening to this one about zombies. Zombies are my favorite thing with the horror genre. So
Mhm.
it was, I never thought that I would listen to people act, like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like actually
interesting.
listen to them act out scenes. So that at first I was like, I don't want to listen to this. What the heck? I'd rather watch it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
so they have the sound effects and the voice acting and everything, and it's meant as a podcast. Like, it wasn't recorded as a video.
Oh,
So
that's so interesting. So it's like a book, right? It's like a
kind of,
yeah.
yeah, in a way, yeah. So like you have like a narrator, and then their lines they're saying, and then the sound effects with what they're doing and stuff like that, which is pretty interesting. And it's called Stay Alive, and they have a whole bunch of different series, different storylines and stuff like that. They've been doing it since like 2010.
Oh wow.
Mm.
That's a long
Okay.
So
time.
yeah, and then shows watching. I don't really watch many things. Um, so right now I've been into Ink Master. So, and now I
Okay.
wish I had more tattoos. So other than that, other than that, that's pretty much it.
We started
Okay.
watching the Menendez
Oh,
documentary. The
Oh
documentary,
my
we got
goodness!
halfway through it last night and it was really good. I had to go to sleep. So if you guys haven't seen that one yet, so the Monsters, the series came out, but this is the documentary with interviews that they did with them from jail, like obviously just like audio over the phone. Really fascinating.
Wow.
mhm.
Yeah. Okay,
Interesting.
Gabs,
That's
go
so
ahead.
up your lane, Nicole. Like, yeah, very on brand for you. I see it and it's ranked high on Netflix, but I'm like, should I? Do I have the time to commit to this? So, anyways, okay. Neither here nor there. I digress. So, Kevin, being a podcast host yourself, if you could have on anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, okay.
He's popular.
Just because, I mean, I wish I wish I. There's been times where I kind of like wish I had lived in that era, just so that I could see him playing live, kind of a thing. So if I ever had, if there was like some kind of realm to be in and be like, you know, and I could have him as a guest on the podcast just to talk about his life and what he had been through, and then obviously, he's known for being into psychedelics and stuff, so I'm sure there's something there spiritually with him as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he was just, I mean, he was ahead of his time with as a guitarist. So
Totally.
And he was a 27 Club member too, especially
yep.
being spiritual. So
Hmm.
that's so significant. Okay, so I'm curious to hear what your answer is to this final question. If you could go to a concert for any artist living or dead, who would it be and why?
Same person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
But
That
Yeah.
tracks.
I also, like, a runner up would be Bob Marley.
Okay. Very nice.
Totally. Good ones.
I
Okay.
was gonna try and mess with you and say Taylor Swift, because almost everybody says Taylor Swift.
People
Love
love
it.
Taylor Swift. Does your daughter like Taylor Swift?
She does. Well, she went through a Taylor Swift phase, but now she's some Olivia girl. I can't remember.
Rodrigo.
Yes, that
Mm-hmm.
one. Yeah, she's
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
wicked into her.
okay. All right. Well, thank you for playing our game. So when we kind of talked about you coming on, you said you wanted to come on and talk about mental health, and I was like, cool. And we just did an episode on how to tell if it's a dark night of the soul or clinical depression. So this is kind of fitting that this is going to be, or this is following that. So
Mhm.
go ahead and just take it away.
All right. So, when it comes to mental health, I feel like, so everybody experiences depression at some point or another, and every year pretty much. But it's hard for a lot of people to get out of their funks. And I would, I guess, essentially, what I would like going forward is, I think, a lot of what would help people is to just be able to be present whenever they, because it's whenever they're out somewhere, they tend to not care about what's going on around them or the people that they're affecting from day to day. And I think there's actually a pretty good video that went viral a little while ago where this guy is interviewing another guy and people walk in between them and the camera. He's like, he just walked in front of the camera, and he's like, hey, you can't attribute malice to what can be attributed to incompetence. Everybody has their own thing going on. They're living in their own world. They're not really worried about other people. They're worried about their day to day and stuff like that. And I think we kind of lose ourselves in our day to day to where our mental health kind of like deteriorates. We're just like, we're going through the motions, kind of like an NPC kind of a thing. And we're just focused on the next task. The next thing is, are my bills going to be paid and stuff like that. So opening yourself up to spirituality, like, so for me, starting the podcast actually opened up a ton of doors. And I would say that I was a pretty depressed kind of person, depression and anxiety, which obviously I still encounter those feelings. I have different ways of dealing with them now, and I find it hard to talk nicely to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think when people get into, especially when they get into that phase of depression, that's what happens. It's just, life is shit and all this stuff. It's all down to perspective. And I think that if the quicker people can be there for one another, whether it's a stranger or whatever, like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, hey, are you depressed today? Like just asking a random person. I'm just saying, just be a little bit more,
I think just being a
open.
little bit kinder to people, right? I think we never know what people are
Yes.
going through. And, sometimes like we're having a bad day and someone might mistake what we're doing or the way we behaved or the way we looked at them as like, with malice, like you said earlier, where it's like maybe we're just not even paying attention. There's something going on. Like, and I know for me, like anytime I see somebody who's like speeding like crazy and like driving erratically, I always think, are they doing that to be an asshole? Or is there some kind of emergency that they're trying to get to? So I always have to try to like switch that thinking to
Mm-hmm.
not be like angry and frustrated with their driving and be like, okay, maybe they just need to get somewhere. Maybe somebody's in the hospital. Maybe something's happened to a family member and they are just trying to get there as quickly as possible. Wait, and I
Yeah.
had a question as you were speaking. So we know you're a Manny Gen. We know you're just kind of like wired to do all these different things. But I also kind of wonder now. So, being that you said you yourself kind of struggle with anxiety and depression, I wonder how much of all this like constant activity is a way of avoiding the feelings and a way of avoiding sitting in these thoughts, right? And these negative thoughts of whatever they might be, right? Like, oh, my life sucks and
Mm-hmm.
I hate my job and my kids don't listen and whatever it might be. And because if we stopped and we sat in that, how uncomfortable is that? And so I know for me, I've kind of realized that, yeah, I'm kind of wired to do these things, but I also think that I keep myself very busy to not think about, my shitty childhood or, when I was hating my job, how much I hated my job and wanted to be out of there. So what do you think about that? Do you think it's, and in a way, like a coping strategy, but maybe sometimes, um, like a maladaptive kind of coping strategy where it's like, yes, it's good, but maybe I could pull back a little bit and sit in my shit for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, because when we're creating, we're focused on the creation, right?
Mm.
So we're not really in the we're like when I'm creating something, my mind is completely blank, and that's all I'm focused on. And I do have this, like, I don't know, I think it seems to be like a man thing where we've got tunnel vision. You literally need to have our attention, and if you're gonna tell us something, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So like when I'm in that, like I don't have any thoughts or cares. But yes, like I would say maybe a little bit is to not deal with some of my, emotions, my thoughts, what the darkness or whatnot. Like when you were on my show, I had told you that I do need to do my shadow work a little bit more because I am. So I did start like a spiritual journey, and what manifested out of that was the podcast. And once the podcast was started rolling, all of a sudden all these other doors started opening, and it's almost like I run to them. You know what I mean? I dive into the water and I see a cavern, and I'm searching through all the caverns with one breath, kind of a thing. It's like I'm I'm drowning, but I don't drown, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
You,
Hmm.
So I'm so glad you asked that question, Nicole. Kevin, would you say that for you, because you said that your mind is blank when you're creating, you're doing other things or just things that interest you, would you say that that's your form of like meditation and connecting with like, a power that's greater than you? Because that's kind of what I'm getting. And to your point about just like, constantly, or Nicole's point about being busy and keeping yourself busy to not feel said feelings. I had a friend recently tell me that, and I was really offended because while it maybe resonates, I actually didn't feel like that was the case, because like my version of play and my version of like how my inner child likes to do, like just express herself, is through work. So I would love your take on if you feel like that's your meditative stance or what your thoughts are.
that's actually, I've always talked about meditation being really hard for me, but now that you say it, and that's probably, honestly, I think that would be a meditative state because I find I love being alone, especially when I'm doing this stuff and I'm creating something like, and I don't like. So I don't like when somebody's over my shoulder or somebody's sitting right next to me when I'm creating something. So like
Same.
like creating the intro for the show or something like that. So I do like, I would say, having my own space, my own bubble. And yeah, I would say that's a meditative um, thing for myself. And I never really thought of it that way, but I could literally sit here and do things like that for hours. Like, and I like to write too, and I write short stories. I don't really put it out, but I've been trying to work on a book for like ever. Who knows if I'll ever finish it, but I really enjoy just sitting there and thinking of stories, or thinking of designs for the podcast, and or something else that I can get into. I'll sit here and I'll think about what combination of foods that I can, with like a fruit or something that I can put with a hot pepper to make a hot sauce, kind of a thing. And I'll I'll sit for hours with a blank mind sometimes doing all this stuff. So I would say, yeah, I think that's a really good way for me that would be my way of meditation.
I feel like I'm the same way, where I can sit there and get a lot of ideas. Where I struggle is with the execution. Like there's always a big failure to launch. And so I can think of different designs that maybe I want to create for merch. We've been talking about maybe doing merch for a while. But I have the ideas in my head, but when it comes to sitting down and actually opening up Canva and figuring it out and playing around, I'm just like, no. So, what helps you to actually execute and say, okay, I have these ideas and now I need to do something with them and not just think about it?
She's asking for herself, by the way,
Yes,
because she's also
I'm
an
asking
Gen.
for advice
Just
and
so you
tips.
know.
So one way that I do is with that like sort of stuff is I get a designer and I pay them to create something for
Smart.
me that's in my mind. So, which recently I just lost her. She quit. I think I don't know what it is. To be honest, I'm not gonna put her like stuff out there, but she just she had a lot on her plate, and the best thing for her was to cut me out. So
Mhm.
I had to search for somebody else. And Alicia from Twisted and Cork, she helped me out, and she actually showed me a little bit about how to use Canva. So I've gotten a little bit better, and I can sit there and go through Canva and create. So I've already created like a bunch of different designs through Canva, and you can draw on there too. Like I guess like
Mhm. You
you
do a
can do
lot.
your own drawings, and yeah, it's oh my god, I lost myself in like a Canva rabbit hole the other day just trying to make stuff of my own that I could call my own, and be like, I've actually made this shit. Like look at this,
Yeah.
So
So,
I can do that kind of stuff forever. And I
yeah.
used to be a drawer. I used to draw portraits.
Mm. Oh.
I wish I had my sketchbook here, but I'm really good with faces. But if anything else, like fingers and hands, and I'm like, I can't do that. But I can do a face like nobody's business.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so let's kind of jump back a little bit because one of the, or a couple things we were talking about before we started recording was so you had said offline that you aren't necessarily spiritual, you're not
Hmm.
necessarily religious, but you kind of have now, and you said earlier, since starting the podcast, you've kind of opened your mind a little bit, I think, because you're so exposed to so many different kinds of people that are coming on your show. And
Hmm.
so you mentioned that you are kind of more nature based. So I was almost kind of wondering if he's like an, forgot the word, but like a nature witch.
You know what? I don't mean to do this, but like, I feel like I have a couple messages for you after we're done recording that have just been coming through. So I would love to know your take on it. But yeah, Nicole, it feels accurate.
Yeah. Or a
Right.
nature, what do we call it? What are the men? The warlocks? I don't know. I
Warlocks.
feel like just very, yeah, so very connected to nature. But so what has kind of been your go to? So, for some people, they do rely very, very heavily on their religion, their faith. For some people that aren't faith based, that are maybe more spiritual, they lean more on their spirituality. What has kind of been your go to when you feel like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit, maybe more anxious. I'm feeling maybe the onset of depression coming on. And especially out there, I wonder, do you think you guys are more affected by like seasonal depression in that area? Or because I don't think we get it so much here in like Southern California, but I wonder in that part of the world, because like, Pacific Northwest states like Oregon and Washington, seasonal depression is huge out there because they don't have the sun, they don't get their vitamin
Hmm.
D.
Hmm.
So do you guys think you're more affected out there? I don't know much about the
Yeah,
weather.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people that, especially January and February, um, because it's January super cold, and then February it's like we're getting closer to spring, and then towards the end of February it kind of seems like it's going to warm up for March to start, giving us flowers and leaves and stuff, and then it just dumps a bunch of snow on us and gets cold again. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, winter definitely affects a lot of people, and I would say for myself as well, it's my birthday is also in November. Obviously, as a Sagittarius, it's end of November, beginning of December. But every year I don't think I've ever had any kind of like spectacular birthday party or anything like that comparatively to my siblings. Like a lot of my siblings are August and July, and they got this beach or lake day, or this big cookout, and like all of the family members would show up, and then it's just me, my siblings, and my parents sitting in the kitchen with a birthday cake, and I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Oh.
I kind of felt bad to feel. I'm like, because they're still showing me that they care and stuff like that, but I was just like, there was always this big extravagant thing for everybody else, but when it came to me, nobody showed up for it. So I feel like that was an onset to the seasonal, because right after that, then we get a shit ton of snow and all that. So
okay, that makes sense. What were you gonna say, Gabs?
yeah.
Oh, I'll ask later. Not relevant to the conversation.
Yeah. So I would say a lot of people do it, especially up here in the Northeast, definitely experience that. A lot of people seem to get a little grumpier and a less patient around that time. So, and we're coming up on that time again. So,
and the reason I was asking is because Scott has kind of talked about that before, that was the reason for the podcast. That was kind of why it was born. So that was why I was wondering. So back to the question though before that, sorry, because I threw two at you. So what is kind of your go-to when you do start to notice, okay, it's coming on, I need to do something about this? Because I think you also mentioned offline that you haven't really been very like inclined to therapy either. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what do you do?
Nature. I like being outside, listening, like just cut off anything that has to do with essentially people. So I like listening to birds. I like watching birds. I like listening to the flow of a river passing by, the leaves in the wind and stuff like that. So I often, when I start getting into those modes, it'll be either that or the gym. The gym has saved my life time and time again. It's like a second home to me, other than being outside. So I hold trauma in my hips and my chest. So there has been, especially since doing this spiritual awakening and trying to find myself and stuff like that, I have cried on the treadmill and while bench pressing. Both times extremely blubbery and ugly out of nowhere, and both times were embarrassing, and I had to leave the gym. So, yeah, for me, when I get into those, yeah.
Okay. There's somebody on TikTok, I think, or Instagram. Her name's oh gosh, what is she? Like the workout witch or something, but she does a lot of somatic, like trauma release in the body, and she does focus a lot specifically in the hips. So I think that's really interesting that you recognize where you store it, because I don't know where I store my trauma. So I love that you are aware of where it's at in your body. She might be kind of cool to check out. She always has little clips of, do this, do this for 2 minutes, do this for 10 seconds to try to start moving some of that energy out. I'll see if I can send you her link too.
Yeah, I just recently started doing yoga, trying to unlock all of that. So like I have it really bad from work, mainly. I have bad lower back pain. So and I'm getting older, so that doesn't help. I never thought, it would happen to me. I never thought getting old would happen to me. So I thought I'd be young forever.
And
but
here we are.
Yeah. So yeah, I think yoga kind of, and yoga is kind of like an opening to spirituality as well.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say you know how like marijuana is the gateway drug to all the other
Yeah,
drugs?
yeah.
Yoga is like the gateway drug to all the other spiritual modalities.
Yeah.
Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah. So I'm trying to be more limber. I think it also will help with the places that I store trauma, especially in the hips. The chest,
Mhm.
I don't think there's really a way to kind of like release that other than essentially basically bench pressing or doing push-ups of some kind.
Breath work.
Um, that
Mhm.
makes sense too. Actually, so I started doing ice baths recently too,
Ooh.
and I was in the ice bath the other day. So this happened to me twice now, where so it like obviously it sucks at first. So I'm sitting there, and I have the tub outside against my garage, so I have this really big window on the side of my garage, and the wind was blowing. I had been in for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Fuck! I don't want to be in here anymore." And I just happened to look into the reflection of the window to see the leaves, like, because all the leaves are all different colors and stuff behind me, and the wind's kind of blowing, and some of them are falling off the trees, and I just like became like entranced and lost track of time to where I was sitting in that, which obviously is also dangerous. So you don't want to make sure that you don't want to sit. You're not sitting in that water for too long. But I ended up being in that tub for 12 minutes, and it didn't feel like it affected me at all. Like I was just
Wow.
like zoned in, like a meditative state where I was just staring at these trees swaying in the wind and watching the leaves fall off of them. So I think that's and ice baths is also a really good way to heal your body as well. So
I
Mhm.
wonder
Hot
if
cold
it's
therapy.
yeah.
yeah, so
I
like the
wonder,
breath
Kevin.
work too, like you were talking
Yeah.
about, with was what I was sitting there. Just like trying
Yeah.
to control my breath and keep myself calm.
I'm actually kind of wondering if it's nature or if it's the movement of your body. Because when you're in nature, you're probably like hiking or doing something like that. When you're at the gym, right, you're moving your
Yeah.
body. Even in the ice bath, right, it was focused on your body. So I wonder for you, like maybe maybe you notice it more because you're outside, but I wonder if for you a lot of the healing comes from like the somatic movement, just like moving your body in different ways because it is different ways. It's not just only the gym.
Hmm.
It's not only outside. It's different. It sounds like it's different ways, I guess.
I think just being active has always been a helpful deterrent for my mental health. It's been that way since I was young. And I think I told you this on my show. I did attempt suicide twice and contemplated it a third time. Um,
Mm.
and I've always found kind of like solace in sports and just being active, being outside, riding my bike when I was a kid. Like you couldn't get me inside because I'd rather be on my bike, just riding around the whole entire neighborhood. So I could get lost on my bike when I was a kid.
And we could do that back then too. We can't like trust our kids to be out. No, we can't trust our kids. We can't trust the world and
People.
other adults and people.
Mhm.
So, Kevin, let me ask you because I kind of briefly touched on that last week when we were talking about the signs of if it's clinical depression or dark night of the soul. And for those of you that haven't listened to it, go ahead and listen to that. But one of the things that I kind of mentioned, I didn't spend too much time on it. One of the signs is thoughts of ending your life or, plans. And so for some people, that is usually like the more extreme symptoms of depression because not everybody that has depression is going to experience that. So for you, when
Hmm.
that was happening, how did you kind of work through that? How did you seek the help that you needed in And I'm curious about maybe the third time where you said you contemplated it but didn't actually attempt. So what were some of the things that were helpful for you back then or when it was
Uh,
happening?
um, so the first time I tried, I was 9 years old. Um, and I don't know if I ever really did anything. Cause so, I was, for, I guess discretion, viewer or listener discretion, wise, I will, get a little graphic. So the first time I had tried to cut my wrist, and it's like right on my forearm. It's a huge ass scar still to this day. It used to be really white. It's a little more blended into my skin now.
Mhm.
Um, so I tried to go right across with like this huge vein in my forearm, not necessarily my actual wrist, um, and it hurt like hell, and it didn't end as fast as I was hoping for. So I went in and told my mom that I had fallen out of a tree. So we went to the hospital, and I think with that, what happened was, my doctor. I think he knew, and he didn't say anything. He held it after he had bandaged me up and stuff like that. Well, I mean, in the ER. So he had my actual pediatrician doctor came, because he had I can't remember why, but either way, he ended up being there, and he was holding on to my hand, like my hand was cupped into his, and he just like stared at me in my eyes, and he goes, "Are you sure this came from a tree?" And I go, "Well, yeah,
Mm.
where else would it have come from?"
Mm.
And then he goes, "Can you do me a favor? Stay out of this particular tree." And I said, "Sure." And like right in that moment, it didn't like sit with me. But I think about a year later, I kind of just started picking up on like what he meant, because he would ask me too. He's like, "Have you climbed any trees lately?" To like,
Mm.
because we had the year updates and stuff. So, um, and then so basically, I think how I really dealt with it was I would try to deflect a lot. I used anger a lot. You know what I mean? So I would try. So if anything, if I was starting to feel that depression and whatnot, I would go to violent outbursts and stuff. And I don't think I really understood what was happening back then. And then when I was 13 was the second time I tried. So this time I used pills. I used, this it sucks that I was in this like feeling that way at this time, but the funny part about it is that I took a bunch of stuff that I didn't know what it was out of my aunt's medicine cabinet, and one of them was a stool softener, so that was not fun. Um, so like I was expecting to not wake up,
Mhm.
and I ended up just being really sick, and I had to go to the ER again, and then I had to get cleaned, and then my doctor, the ER doctor was like, "You need to do a new change your diet or whatever." So then our regular doctor was giving us the things, what I was allowed to eat and what I wasn't allowed to eat, and back and again I bottled it. So basic,
Mhm.
I guess I'm saying a lot of stuff just to essentially tell you that I bottled it. I didn't really deal with it, and I didn't deal with it until I was 30. And it all came to a head when I my ex girlfriend and I had split up. That's when this whole like spiritual awakening thing started. And she had pushed me to the point where like, I tell people this every time I tell this part of the story about how I ended up feeling this way. Like, I'm not saying she ever did anything on purpose. It's just she was a Leo, so everything was about her.
Leos, yeah.
Oh god.
We know.
Oh.
So everything she did felt manipulative, had to be her way, and all this stuff. Like she basically she was trying to mold me out of clay, like God did with fucking Adam. Just be the way that she wanted me to be, and I couldn't be that for her. So it just tore me up, and I did end up changing into somebody that I didn't recognize. And I was living in we split up, and I was living in my mother's basement, and I never wanted to go back to my mother's house just because of, the childhood that I had with her. But, luckily she gave me space to be there, which was nice of her. But, I was sitting on my couch in the basement, and I had a gun in my lap, and I was contemplating it. I was just sitting, because I will say that if this time I tried, it would have happened. Like I would have succeeded for sure.
Yeah.
And I ended up messaging my ex-wife and telling her, and then she essentially just talked me off the ledge. And it was pretty easy to do so. She just brought up my kids. I'll say my kids essentially saved my life to begin with, because when my son arrived, like I was going down a pretty bad path. But that's when right then and there was when I started putting the work in. I started focusing on myself. I started opening myself up to other things and other possibilities. I started to change my perspective. I started focusing more on my health, what I was eating, because what we eat can determine our mood so quickly and easily, and I don't think a lot of people understand that aspect. And it could also have to do with supplements that you're taking, like certain pre-workouts can make you a nutcase out of nowhere. It's almost like you're bipolar or schizophrenic with certain foods and stuff like that. So I started doing this work. I started hiking more. I started being outside more, because that's what I was lacking at the time. And I have a friend who is deeply spiritual, and he started talking to me about a lot of things. And he's a Cancer, so he's very
He's
emotional.
amazing.
So
amazing, you mean? Not emotional, amazing?
Yes,
he's the goat.
yeah. He wears his heart on his sleeve, I should say.
Yeah.
So when we had a falling out too, and it was because he went to his emotions before, how do I say it? Like he reacted before, before he logically could assess the situation. He went to his emotions, and I don't hate him for it at all. I was just like, I'm not going to be around you if that's how you're going to talk to me, kind of thing. But he did help a lot, and I am extremely grateful. We had been friends for 20 years, and I'll probably end up talking to him again, just because he's always been such a great friend. But yeah, so he helped a lot. He's like, man, you just, you gotta put in the work. He talked to me about shadow work and stuff like that. And, I started doing stuff, and then I started the podcast. And then, cause before the podcast came about, I was really introverted. Like I'm super shy. I'm normally a super shy person, and I don't even open up about stuff. So the fact that like I can talk about my trauma, my drama, and my bullshit to anybody is interesting. And this is also one of the first times that I went through all of the attempts and whatnot without crying. So I mean, I can feel it kind of like back there, but it doesn't want to come all the way out. So
we appreciate that. That's hard, and this is a safe space, as you witness, we always set a nice little safe container
Hmm.
for all of us. So in that sense, I feel like it's doing its job, that it was able to like support you in that, because that stuff is really hard to talk about, especially knowing that it's not just talking to us, that this is gonna be shared with other people. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say too. I like to say this on my show, for especially for anybody dealing with suicidal thoughts or deep depression. So yeah, this is probably more for. Actually, I guess it could be spirituality too. So like, whatever you believe in, the higher power, God, Creator, whatever it is, um, created the universe, and they, he, she, whatever, looked at the universe and felt like it needed one of you, and now you exist, and
Oh,
your
I love
existence
that.
is important.
Yeah. Kevin, can I ask you a question before we kind of start wrapping up? So, as you were kind of sharing these things, and a lot of them happened when you were younger, right? Like 9 and 13.
Hmm.
At some point, because you said you kind of, when you would feel it, you would turn to anger. So, did you get that
Hmm.
label of like anger problem, anger management
Yeah, I had to
slapped
do
on you?
anger therapy. I had to do anger management as a teenager a few times,
Mhm.
and um, I think so. Like with therapy and stuff, it always felt like they were trying to fix me, like something was wrong with me. So I never um, got into the therapy. So when I had split up with my ex, I did, and my therapist told me, she's, because I told her, I was like, I've done this song and dance many times. It's never worked for me, and she asked me about my experiences, what the reason was, and stuff like that, and you know, I was like, and tell her about it, and she's like, well, that's because they were trying to fix you, like there was something wrong with you. She's like, I'm not going to try and fix you, I'm just going to try and help you. And so that's what
Mhm.
started the work with her, and that also helped in that aspect. So yes, I, I was considered a spaz, short fuse, stuff like that as a kid. So
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of the things that we've spoken about here several times, is how sad little boys turn into like angry men, but a lot of times the sadness is safer, at least in the mind of a little boy, to be expressed as anger, because it's
hmm.
not safe for little boys to be sad, right? And we always tell little boys, stop crying or stop acting like a girl, so it's safer to be like angry and aggressive, and a lot of times it you get mislabeled when you're really just sad. A lot of these little boys are just really sad.
Yeah,
So,
anger is how men cry.
yeah, totally. So before we kind of wrap up, I I think it's really interesting, because there isn't, and we, obviously it's kind of like a duh, but there isn't a one size fits all for how people can address like mental health, right?
Hmm.
Um, for some people, they might go to therapy. For some people, they might turn to spiritual practice. For some people, they might turn to a local church or religion that really resonates with them. And some people might do a combination of all of those things, right? Some people might have a therapist that they work with, and they might also be working with a spiritual coach and going to services on a Sunday, right? So it can be so
Hmm.
many different things. And I think that that's the beauty of it, is you can do whatever you want, right? There isn't one thing that is better than the other, and what worked for you one time might not work for you this time, and that's okay. And kind of knowing that, what, I'm gonna like dip my toes here and there and all these other places, and maybe that's what feels really good in the moment, and that is what's really supportive. And so, when people are saying, oh, well, you should fill in the blank, you shouldn't do anything, right? You do what you feel like you have to do. You do what is feeling like it's supportive and helping. So yeah, that's just kind of the last
Yeah,
thing I wanted to.
yeah, finding people to as a support system is super important. When you get into these kind of modes, you can kind of like tell who is a friend and who isn't. So you can kind of weed them out on your own when you feel when you're in a depressive mode and you talk to people, your circle or what you call your circle,
Mhm.
you can find the ones that are supportive and the ones that aren't. And I would
Right.
say get rid of the ones that don't seem to have your best interest in mind. And that's
Mhm.
easier said than done, I know that, but
Yeah.
you want to surround yourself with love. I think our whole purpose being on this earth is to experience and to give love.
Mhm. Yeah. Gabs, you have anything you wanna?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing. I know it's really going to land with some people that need to hear it, and I'm really excited to just share some messages personally off of camera.
I
Sweet.
also wanted to point out too, so we haven't had very many men, right? We've talked about this
Mm-mm.
before. We've had our dad, but he's, it's like, does he count? He kind of does, but he doesn't.
He
We
counts.
collabed with, we we collabed with the guys, with Ryan and Scott. But it was more of a collaboration versus a guest. And then we had Brett, and then we had Phil, and now we have Kevin, which I don't know if this is a collab or a guest, but whatever. And so one of the things that we spoke about with Phil was that how for men there isn't necessarily like a space for you guys when you guys are having these things that are coming up. Like it can feel very isolating. It can feel very lonely. And
Mm,
especially if you are dipping your toes into some kind of spiritual practice, right? With churches, you might have maybe more of that community, but spirituality is very, I would say, it can kind of be a little bit lonely, right? Because you're kind of working on a lot of those things on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
you mentioned your friend Kevin, who was talking to you about, the shadow work and all of those things. But I think it's so important for men to try to like find each other and like create their own community, especially in these areas. So Phil, I think it's time to get that stuff going.
Yeah, we know he's going to listen to this too.
and and he's going to tell me it's time for me to do my stuff. I know, I'm working on it. I sent a text message today. But Phil, I really think the men need you.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and final thought as we wrap up. I feel like men are really doing the best that they can, and I also want to say like just thank you for your vulnerability,
Yeah,
and
thank
also
you.
point out that like I really just it's fascinating generally speaking how men process their emotions physically, and I know I've said that before, but it's like staying active or just moving their energy, being in nature, like ice baths, like sauna. It's just there's something there that I need to lean into and just know because that's how my brain works.
Kevin, can I ask you another question before Gabby does the card pull? So I was thinking about it when you were talking
Absolutely.
about nature.
Mm.
And I was thinking back to when you guys were at the Conjuring House. This is so random. Okay, but I was
Hmm.
thinking back to then. And I remember them talking about how you were outside barefoot. And I'm kind of wondering, do you do that intentionally? Like, is that your way of grounding to nature, or is that something separate? Because
Yeah.
that is
Yes.
like one of the big things that we talk about in the work is you should go put your feet on the grass, you should ground and connect to nature. And I was like, oh, Kevin was totally doing that night. And I was so worried about you. I was like, he's gonna step on a bug. It's dark out there, and he's gonna like hurt his feet. That was the first thing that popped in my mind when they were talking about Kevin's outside barefoot, and I'm like, oh my god, his feet.
Yes. Yes. I find I don't know. Like it always makes me feel better to put my bare feet to the ground. There's something that happens to me mentally when when I'm out there. So yeah, every chance that I get. When I'm on a big hike, I tend not to. But if I'm just out and just trying to clear my head, just thinking or something like that, yeah, I will. And I thought it would be a good way when we were at the Conjuring House, not only to connect with the land there for potentially talking to spirits, but to, kind of find a common ground with whatever was out there as well. So yeah, I took my shoes and socks off, and I'm sitting out there outside, and Scott comes out and he goes, "Why the fuck is your shoes off?"
That was what I thought. I was like, oh my god, he's gonna hurt himself. He's gonna step on something. He's gonna start bleeding. Okay, yeah, that was just a kind of thought that I had when you were talking about it earlier. Okay, Gabs.
So I'm pulling from, it's called Seasons of the Witch.
Oh.
Say it, Nicole. How do you say it?
Sam Hain.
Samhain.
My son was reading a book the other day about Halloween, and he's like, Sam Hain. I'm like, saw when? And he looked at me and he's like, Sam Hain. And then it read back to him, and it was like, saw when? And I wanted to be like, see, I told you.
What I like about it is that it has like the red foil. And Juliet Diaz, she does them seasonally. So she has a Christmas one, and she has them for the other seasons too. But this one's a self-help deck. So, but it's like Halloween themed and has like horror, goth, grotesque type of imagery.
I'm surprised you bought it. That'd be like so up my alley, though.
I really liked it. I've had it for a while. Okay, so the card I pulled is number 1, All Hallows Eve. And I'm not so familiar with this deck, so I need to look into what the general meaning of it is. Stand by, please.
Halloween's coming, people.
Oh, the keywords are emotions and summoning. So it is suggesting to release and use the energy of Samhain, Nicole. to reflect, go inward, and release during the liminal space and time, and to call upon the energies that you work with, your guides, your spirit team, to navigate said transitions before we go into the darkness that is winter.
Love that. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on, for sticking it out when you have to be up in like 3 hours. And we're going to put all the links to your website, to your show, in our show notes. So go check out Kevin's show. Check out the episode that I did with him. We can link that also. And I feel like I had something else. I can't remember, but we'll be waiting for all these new things that you're doing to drop. Like you're such a Manny Jen to the T. Yeah.
I need the coffee. I need to try it.
Yeah. Thank you,
That's
Kevin. And yeah. It's like, I wonder what it would taste like with some hot sauce in there, just start like blending all of your everything together. Hey, you never know. Maybe that could be a challenge on the morning show that you and David are doing. Like maybe you guys do something crazy like that.
Put hot sauce in the coffee. Yeah, we could do that. That's interesting.
See who can keep it down, or see who can not make a face when they do that.
Well, that would probably be me.
Yeah, probably.
I have ghost peppers out there in the garden that I gotta start picking, and I gotta test them before I put them in a hot sauce.
Oof, good luck with that. Okay, guys, we will catch you next time for right before Halloween. That'll be fun. Ooh. Okay, see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.